So, theoretisch läuft es wieder. 19 war dein Mod-Check vorhin, dass der Stream abgekackt ist schon oder lief er dann noch? Weil ich dachte halt, das hat so gepasst, weil der Doktor war nicht da und du machst Mod-Check, weißt du? Da habe ich jetzt nicht wirklich rausgesehen, dass der Stream deswegen aus sein war. Nee, der war schon weg. So viel dazu. Ja, deine Aussage wohl nicht verstanden, offensichtlich. Yay! Ähm, na gut, da fehlt ein kleines bisschen. Aber im Grunde genommen, um es kurz zusammenzufassen, sie hat mich ja gerade geweckt, die Krankenschwester, und hat mir jetzt ein Blanko Fragenzettel gegeben, von wegen mit Ja und Nein Fragen. Und unser Charakter möchte eigentlich den Doktor jetzt nochmal genauer wegen seinen Symptomen und so weiter fragen, aber er traut sich auch nicht, die Krankenschwester jetzt nochmal darauf anzusprechen, weil die hier schon so entschuldigend ihn anguckt und ihm alles erklärt, was er erklären soll und so weiter. Er hat dann auch überlegt, dass er seine Sachen einfach hinten auf dem Zettel drauf schreibt, damit er nochmal untersucht wird. Aber ja, da hat sie dann schon angefangen hier, ja, das sind ein Ja- und Nein-Fragen, bla bla bla. So, und da müssten wir ungefähr jetzt sein. Keine Ahnung, warum da einfach Internet aus war. Keine Ahnung. Ich guck mal kurz bei 54 Minuten noch, was ist das angehalten? Keine Ahnung warum. Keine Ahnung. It really did seem like some sort of psychological test. Would they really be able to actually learn something from questions like these? Hazuki-san stared at me intently. She showed no signs of leaving. But it wasn't like she had nothing else to do or anything. It was more like she was monitoring, no, watching over me or something. My nervousness had been My nervousness at being watched made it hard for me to think clearly, but I guess she was just doing her job. Either way, I knew I ought to fill out the test quickly. Okay, ich scheine es wirklich ausfüllen zu müssen. Problem Nummer eins: when you have business to take care of, you prefer to use emails over phone calls. Definitiv. Your ears ring every now and then. Ist uns das im Spiel passiert? Eigentlich nicht. You felt someone's gaze and turned around before. Yep. You have seen objects that are supposedly stationary move for an instant. Ähm, ich glaube ja. Ich glaube schon. You have experienced a premonition. Ja, der Mord. While looking at a digital clock in passing, you have seen the same numbers appear in sequence. Nee, nicht, dass ich wüsste. You have already cried once this month. Der so viel Panikattacken wie er hat, hat er auf jeden Fall schon gecried. You can masturbate using only your imagination. Für Seratan immer. When masturbating, you can visualize uninterrupted imagery. Keine Ahnung. You can daydream without closing your eyes. Definitiv. The frontal view of a car sometimes looks like a face. Das ist mir nicht passiert, glaube ich. You have a hard time going to the bathroom after watching a horror movie. Nee. You cannot handle haunted houses. Ich glaube, ich kann nicht mit peoplen. When you start reading a book, you become so immersed in it that you lose track of time. Ja, ich übernehme das halt von wegen, er spielt ja ein MMO und so weiter. You believe that other planets inhabited by human-like creatures exist. Glaube nicht. The personality attributed to your astrological sign matches your personality perfectly. Ich glaube, sowas guckt er gar nicht. You're prone to motion sickness. Das kann ihm passieren. Ihm wird öfter mal übel. You believe there is a God. Weiß ich nicht, ob er daran glaubt. You have a strong ability to sense the supernatural. Wahrscheinlich. You dreamt in color before. Yep. Vor wenigen Minuten quasi. You have been in a dream in which you knew you were dreaming. Nein, im Traum wusste ich nicht, dass ich träume, hat er gesagt. You have experienced memory loss, definitiv. You have a hard time making eye contact with people, definitiv. Merely the sight of sour food makes you more full with self-shot. Nein, ich glaube nicht. You feel like yawning when other people do. Ich glaube auch nicht. Das Beste ist, der Zettel hieß Nozomi, was halt Wunsch oder so heißen soll, glaube ich. Hazuki-san thanked me as I answered the final question, despite the fact that I hadn't said anything. I felt pretty embarrassed at being watched the whole time. My face was probably bright red. Because of that, I avoided looking at Hazuki-san when I handed her the test. There had been no time to write my symptoms on the back. They were prescribing me something? Dr. Takashina had never said anything about that. Oh, wow, thoughtful as ever, Dr. Takashina. And yet, when I realized I would have to wait in the lobby again, my mood was immediately sent spiraling. By the time I had gotten back to Shibuya, it was already evening. The hospital was technically in Shibuya Ward, but since Yoyogi was the closest station to it, commuting via train was the fastest. But the Yamanote line had been as crowded as ever. Despite only being 2 stops long, the trip back still made me incredibly tired. Hey Logo, haben wir nicht letztens erst über Shibuya Station geredet? Hier ist sie. Value of death. Life is suffering caused by desire. To end the suffering, we must end desire. The contagious madness, the unchanging me. Okay, was ist das für ein Film? Wir sind in Shibuya Station. Ja, erst guckst du mich nicht, jetzt bist du leise. Warum hast du den Stream überhaupt an? Riding the train any farther would have been a pain in the ass. So I had decided to get off at Shibuya Station and make my way back to base from there. Even then, there was still tons of people outside the station. I despised crowds. They made my head spin. Not wanting to stay much longer, I tried to speedwalk out at Scramble Crossing. Damit du dich nicht so einsam fühlst. Sagt der nach jemand anderen erst gemerkt hat, dass der Stream aus war. Ah ja. But even walking straight was nigh impossible. Stumbling even slightly caused people from both behind and front to bump into me. What's more, a bunch of people handing out pocket tissue packs blocked the way, practically forcing everyone who passed by to take them. Fed up with everything, I ignored the first person handing them out, but took some of the second because at least she was a cute girl. I was so sick and tired of these people handing out tissue packs and shit to push their products. Didn't they have anything better to do than stand right in the middle of the road? Well, whatever. It was free, so might as well take it. Ja gut, die verdienen ihr Geld damit, aber egal. Inside the tissue pack I took was a red flyer, and there was a paragraph's worth of shit written on top of it with white ink. Talk about ostentatious like holy shit. You couldn't exactly miss something with that color scheme. As I walked along, I gave it a quick skim. Type B blood is in short supply. Currently, Shibuya Ward is suffering from a severely short supply of Type B blood. This has only continued to worsen, and we have been struggling to secure the proper quantities of blood for those in need of transfusions. In the worst case scenario, this may lead to the death of many. Without your cooperation, lives may be lost. Please consider becoming a blood donor and visit the donation at Shibuya Station of the Inokashira Line. Das ist das Gute an dieser Übersetzung, weil tatsächlich diese, ich sag mal, inoffizielle Übersetzung von dem Spiel, also oder vielmehr, die ist nicht direkt inoffiziell, aber die ist halt so eine Art Director's Cut von der offiziellen. Also so ein bisschen ein paar Fehler berichtigt und so weiter. Ich konnte jetzt zum Beispiel den kompletten Flyer über die Bluttransfusion und so weiter lesen. Aber viele solcher Sachen wurden in der offiziellen Übersetzung gar nicht übersetzt. Und das hier ist halt so richtig, dass es zum Bild passt und so weiter. Finde ich wunderbar gemacht, sowas. It was a blood donation flyer. As I read it, I thought back to the form I had filled out in the hospital. I didn't have any memory of filling out something like that 4 years ago. Maybe the way they examined patients had changed recently. Even then, though, something felt oddly familiar about the test. Deja vu. I'd been getting hit by it all the time recently. Having my mind and body not function the way I wanted them to, the sense of dissonance was an incredibly uncomfortable feeling. So, in order to ascertain the true cause behind the deja vu, I tried flipping back through the pages of my memories. Thought back to when Mom had taken me to the hospital about once a week. I had kept my mouth shut at all times and only expressed myself via nodding or shaking my head. At first I had been taken to a perfectly ordinary examination room, but since I showed no signs of improvement, I started going to a different room before long. The room had essentially been a consoling room, which meant it put the patient's relaxation first and foremost. In other words, there were sofas and plushies and whatnot located all throughout the room. Dr. Takashina had taken a very patient approach to treating me, all while refusing to blame my situation on anyone. He alone caught on to how I was merely choosing not to speak rather than having the inability to do so. Meanwhile, my mom would always talk to me in an unnaturally cheery voice. Every time I had gone to the hospital, the doctor would always welcome me with a refreshing smile. The nurses also treated me with all the love and care they could. And I had a feeling that there had always been one more person in the room. Right, there had been a man in black suit, one that felt fairly out of place in a hospital. As I had been doing my best not to speak, I never asked about him. I didn't know who the hell he was the entire time he was there. He didn't feel like a doctor, and he always stood all alone in a fair distance away from everyone else, all while gazing out the window. I had dubbed him Mr. Nozomi in my head. Nozomi war auch der Zettel, den er gerade ausgefüllt hat. So that wasn't his actual name on anything. The man in the suit always had a badge on his chest, no matter the situation. And and that badge was the word Nozomi. It had looked like a logo to me, though, so it probably wasn't a name tag. Oh, I knew why it was bothering me now. The test from before also had the Nozomi logo printed on it. I had a hunch that I had seen it somewhere before, and now I finally remembered exactly where. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off my chest. Set aside what was Nozomi anyway. I was pretty sure it was the name of a
のぞ
business.
みさんっていう美人女社長が設立したカウンターテロ組織とか漫画みたいだ。
Komischer Kommentar. When I had arrived at my base, I had gone straight to look up Nozomi online. However, there was so many results that I couldn't manage to pin down anything specific. Well, let's go with a more normal theory first. That Nozomi guy could have been from the company that made the tests, and he was just at the hospital in order to sell them or something. The hospital had then adopted the tests recently, and they decided to have me fill one out today. Nah, I doubted that. I had never heard of some rando attending a patient's examination like that. So, who the hell was that Mr. Nozomi guy? Memories kept pulling at my mind, but I was fed up with it at that point. Either way, the reason behind my deja vu was now clear. I decided that I had asked Dr. Takashina about my memory issues. I would ask Dr. Takashina about my memory issues next week, but until then, I was going to stay cooped up in my room without bothering with school. There was no way in hell I would go to a school where people were trying to hurt me. In all honesty, I really don't want to screw up the minimum attendance chart I had so carefully constructed, but it wasn't worth getting myself killed over. I gave up on my Nozomi search and went to look for any interesting looking threads on @channel. (633) name Morning Anons. New Gen News Bearer. New Gen number 1 Group Dive. New Gen number 2 Manchild. New Gen number 3 Crucifixion. New Gen number question mark to be continued shudders. The news board was almost completely filled with new gen threats. Even the ESO board had threats like, let's try and replicate new gen crimes in ESO, and to be honest, I was beyond sick and tired of the whole thing. Diving back into ESO, I found Grim. The Ad Channel news board is super fucking boring recently. They really want shut the fuck up about New Gen. Well, it is the biggest thing of note recently. Whenever a new incident like this happens, people always freak the fuck out about it. Shitstorm incarnate, lol. They still haven't caught the culprit? I mean, you and I both know the police are incompetent, lol. There's ton of idiots all over the web painting the culprit as some mole hot chick, lol. The demon girl. Desolate eyes of the girl I had seen at the crucifixion murder scene flashed through my mind, and I felt a shiver down my spine. As much as I didn't want to remember that ghastly memory would come back at any time, I let my guard down. Wait, I had seen the culprit's face. I knew who they were. Should I report it to the police? But I didn't want to get involved. Demon Girl is already an offshoot of the perp like that. That might be taking a bit too far, to be honest. Anyway, the new gen cases are seriously interesting, dude. I have joined the Free Para New Gen community. You're getting way too into this. Everyone but you and Siskin from the other guild has joined. God, was he serious? Now I wouldn't be able to hop on and chat with my guild anymore. New Gen is some weird shit, man. Gives me the chills. I knew you were into gory stuff, Grimbud. Don't tell me you are the type that looks for artistic merit in murder cases. True, the crucifixion corpse could have easily been mistaken for modern art, so it would be fair to say that it was artistic in some sense. Now, the only thing you should be seeking here is how lewd it is. It's like the ultimate form of BDSM. The guy's hopeless. I had better do something quick. You'll get it once you leave behind your virginhood, Night Hatan. You lowly bastard. Are you saying you are not a virgin? You damn traitor, Ors. An ideograph depicting a person on all fours. Pressing O is the head, R is the arms and torso, and the Z is the legs. Typically used to express despair, dejection, and frustration. There's no set way to pronounce it, and such people may pronounce it ors. Also es ist quasi am Boden liegend. Gut, da kannst du kannst dich ein bisschen denken, aber schon sehr weit hergeholt, finde ich. Back on topic though, the site pooling all the information together is filled to the brim, so you really ought to take a look. I really didn't want to look. I was scared too. I wanted to escape the reality in which I had witnessed the scene of the crime. That's why I had been intently avoiding all info related to New Gen ever since then. I wanted to fool myself into believing that the gruesome scene I had seen had been just a delusion, but I was basically a god in Ezo, not just some strong, but someone who knew all. Not to mention I was a guild leader. It would be beyond embarrassing if the organizer of the group couldn't keep up with the latest topics. I had to make sure that didn't happen. I clicked the link to the site Grim had sent me. The top of the site had the title All Things New Gen written in big letters right in the center of the page. The type of the website was basically like a wiki. It was open to the public and anyone could enter info related to a particular topic. In the case of this New Gen site, loads of people entered info concerning New Gen and the site updated as they did. Sites like it tended to suffer from unreliable info being mixed in, as well as its fair share of vandalism from trolls, but they could still be pretty useful for getting a quick overview of an incident. Many links were pasted all over the page. I promptly clicked on the link that read Current Timeline. My heart raced. Just reading the site was making me nervous. My palms were slick with sweat. The first incident, dubbed the group dive, was the suicide of 5 high schoolers that had jumped to their death. It had happened in the dead of night on September 7th, which was about a month ago at this point. The building they had jumped off was Cornelius Tower, which was located in Shibuya. They dove off the rooftop helipad. Of course, all 5 had died instantly. According to the autopsies, the 5 had all had foreign pieces of flesh under their fingernails, along with various scratch marks on their hands. Based on that, it was surmised that the 5 had been holding hands as they jumped for one reason or another. There was no suicide note of any form on the rooftop. A person online, one of those people acting like Snake, had actually gone to Cornelius Tower themselves and reported that the door to the roof had a sign on it saying "No entry to unauthorized personnel." It was locked practically 24/7. Snake, the name of a protagonist of a certain video game who is a professional in covert operations. Was für ein Spiel könntest du meinen? Naturally, the door had been locked at the time of the incident, and the key was not found among the belongings of the deceased. Essentially, the rooftop helipad had effectively been a locked room, and the method the 5 had used to enter was completely unknown. There was a very high chance that someone rather than the 5 had been present at the scene of the incident. The second incident, dubbed the man-child murder case, had occurred 12 days after the first incident, placing it on September 19th. Earlier in the morning, a university student on their way home from a karaoke session had discovered a collapsed man covered in blood by Shibuya Station underpass. The victim had been a university student residing in Shibuya Ward, a 21-year-old named Konoe Shizuo. He was already dead when he was discovered, but his abdomen had an unnatural, very large swelling. According to the autopsy, someone had performed an abdominal insection on the man, stuffed a newly born fetus inside the man's stomach, then stitched it back up. Moreover, a DNA test confirmed that the fetus had no blood relation to the victim. The victim was a bachelor and had no relatives with any woman. It was only online speculation, but it was assumed that the 32-week-old fetus had been removed from its mother's body via C-section. However, the mother's identity, current whereabouts, and even whether or not she was alive was completely unknown. It was possible that the police had already discovered her whereabouts, but if they had, nothing had been publicly revealed. I averted my eyes from the monitor to keep myself from throwing up. Jesus Christ, talk about nauseating. The culprit was completely insane, and maybe, just maybe, these ghastly murders had been carried out by that girl. Japan is over! I stared at Seira-tan in an attempt to bleach my eyes. And with that, I somehow managed to stabilize my mental state. I considered taking the meds the doctor had given me, but Seira-tan did the job nonetheless. Anyway, while that might have been necessary to maintain Neidhart's honor, reading all that gory stuff really fucking sucked. Okay. Oh, how wonderful caring you are, Seira-tan. Seira-tan was the only one who would stay by my side. I couldn't ask for a better waifu. I rested my chin on my hands above the table, watching Seratan smile as I took deep breath. Ah, my soul had been healed. I might be able to get through a little more if I kept glancing at her as I read. And so I decided to put that into practice right away. Come to think of it, why had those two unrelated cases both been slapped with a new gen label? Apparently, the group dive had intentionally been treated as a group suicide. But after the man-child incident had occurred, people online re-investigated it and discovered the unnatural circumstances surrounding the scene of the crime. Rumors then began to appear saying that the five may have actually been killed and the suicide label was merely a cover-up. According to the parents and good friends of the five victims, there was no way it could have been suicide. Then the mass media had started making connections between the two incidents, starting with where they occurred, Shibuya. Madness explodes in today's youth, the new generation madness. Sensationalist headlines like that had started popping up everywhere, to my understanding anyway. Then came the third case, the murder case I had witnessed, dubbed the Crux Affliction. The site didn't have as much info on this case, likely due to it having only occurred recently. The victim, 56-year-old Ota Hisashi, was a university professor who had been crucified with stakes to the concrete wall of a vacant house. It was all that had been publicly revealed. Many of the neighboring residents had claimed that for over an hour after the time the crime was thought to have occurred around 8 p.m., they could hear the sound of nails being hammered into something. Even I had heard the sound. I could hear it even now, a horrible, terrifying sound. On a related note, no connection between the third case and the group dive or the man-child had been discovered yet. But with it being the third abnormal incident to happen in quick succession in Shibuya, the Crux Affliction was naturally treated as another new-gen incident. The police and mass media believed that all the crimes had different culprits, but the predominant opinion online, or rather what most of the net hoped was going on, was that the crimes either shared a single culprit or an organized group of culprits. There also were many occult-based theories whispered about online, such as that everything had begun with the earthquake from 2 months ago. 2 months ago, an earthquake with a seismic intensity of 3 occurred, with Shibuya as its epicenter. Although the scale was fairly minor, there were still 8 fatalities, which became a popular topic of discussion. Come to think of it, it was true that the new gen cases had begun after that earthquake. Because of that, the new gen occultists argued that the 8 deaths in the earthquake should be counted as the first new gen incident, causing a dispute between them and the new gen mainstreamers. Regardless, the entire situation was abnormal. After all, despite the fact that the 3 brutal cases had occurred in quick succession, no clues on any of their culprits had been found. And many online were waiting eagerly for a 4th case. If I wasn't directly connected to it all, I probably would have joined in on the chaos myself, posted in a few threads, made a few theories. I could have been waiting excitedly for the 4th incident at this very moment. Damn it, all these assholes were just having the time of their lives, weren't they? A week had passed since the Crux Affliction. But neither the demon girl nor the police had made any moves. If they knew I had been at the scene of the crime, they would definitely come and question me about it, but there hadn't been any signs of that actually happening. Thank God. It looked like I wasn't gonna get dragged into this after all.
あなたには予知能力がありますか？
That claim Yua had trusted at me flashed in my
予知
mind.
能力があるって思わなきゃ納得できないような画像データをあなたが持っていたから。
Even though I had finally started to relax, that feeling of despair came flying right back in an instant. The image sent by Shogun, the data was still on my PC. Yua's claims were no more than delusions she had dreamed up. Her deductions were a total stretch, not to mention logically bankrupt. While I might have ended up not asking about it in the hospital today, the idea of me doing things without remembering them was completely absurd, utterly impossible. I mean, nothing like that had ever happened to me before, so the gory image was obviously faked.
だったらさ、合成だって証拠を見つけちゃえばいいさ。あの画像解析しちゃおうよ。
But it's so disgusting. I really don't want to look at it any more than I already have.
あの女を論破しちゃえば、タッキーはもう怯えることなく平穏な生活に戻れるんだよ。やるしかないっしょ。
Of course, she was exactly right. Yua had talked to me as if I were the culprit behind the crook's affliction, but that wasn't true at all. I mean, I had seen the culprit's face, as if I had let Yua put the blame on me after that. So, with a gulp, I double clicked on the folder where the images were caged. It was the first time in 3 days that Ban Yasuhi had set foot in the Shibuya police station conference room. The investigation meeting for the Maru Yamacho crucifixion homicide case had already begun, and Ban was greeted with universal gazes of displeasure for his tardiness. Ban forced a polite smile before bending down to sit. He supposed that it was not quite the right time to reveal that he had been cooped up in the bathroom with diarrhea. The Maru Yamacho crucifixion homicide case had been assigned to the Shibuya police station on the morning after the incident. They were lacking in manpower due to the Cornelius Tower mass suicide case in the Shibuya station undergrad and fetus homicide case. Even the third-rate Assistant Inspector Ban, whom the Metropolitan Police Department's investigation division were practically begging to retire, had been called in by the main office. Moreover, as all the incidents had occurred within the Shibuya police station's jurisdiction, it was an unusual situation in which a single jurisdictional station was utilizing 3 special investigation teams. Because of this, operations were made quite difficult, with the 3 investigation teams having access to only one large conference room that they had to alternate between. The mass media was hailing it all as one large case known as New Gen, and there were rumors that the police would combine these 3 investigation teams in order to make a New Gen investigation division, thus solving the issue of manpower. All the detectives found this prospect completely asinine. Regarding it as nothing more than an absolute joke. Bun's superior, Inspector Matsunaga, who was in charge of the investigation team, called out to Bun with a piercing gaze. But Bun did not notice this. He simply continued to cool himself down with a handheld fan as he took a moment to recuperate.
警部補バン警部補聞いているのか
呼ばれてるっすよ。バンさんの報告待ちなんすから。ちょっと。
The whispers of Bun's partner, a rookie named Suva, finally got him to realize he was being called. Dieser Suva-Guy, der ist in der Schule, glaube ich, rumgelaufen, oder? Der ist unserem Protagonisten aufgefallen. Er dachte, er ist ein neuer Lehrer, aber scheinbar ist es Pulses.
すんません報告は諏訪から
自分っすか？
俺がいなくても報告しとけって言っといたろうが早くしろ
Suva's sighed as his superior jabbed him in the elbow, then stood up straight and tall.
犯行現場近くの監視カメラの解析がようやく出たっす。出ました。犯行時間に不審な人物が映ってました。
Murmurs echoed throughout the conference room. The relaxed atmosphere from before had been turned on its head. The other detectives began to take frantic notes in order to not miss a single word of Sua's report. Considering the situation, it was no surprise they were so frantic about it. After all, 3 horrific cases had occurred within their jurisdiction in the span of a single month. Only one of which was not ruled as a homicide as of yet. Their strong determination to find the culprit, even in the face of their reputations, was only natural.
プロジェクターに映像を出します。
As per the instructions Bun had given him in advance, Sua had the projector display the footage on the projector screen. The projector shone on an image of the confined, filthy back alley of Maruyamacho. It was night and there were very few streetlights present, so virtually nothing was visible.
犯行現場から約50メートル離れたところにあるコインパーキングの監視カメラです。
The parking lot was only big enough to fit 2 vehicles. It was a tiny plot of land interposed between 2 buildings, and it was constructed without any real care as well. The scene of the crime was not visible in the footage, not even the path leading to it could be seen. All it displayed was a road that was one farther away from the crime scene. The video had no sound. The time the video had been recorded was graciously displayed on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. 9:34 p.m.
犯行現場近隣の住民の証言により、21時過ぎから21時半頃まで釘を打ちつける音がしていたというのはご承知の通りだと思いますが、この映像は21時34分、つまりまさに犯行時間直後ということになります。不審人物が映っているのは21時34分53秒からおよそ6秒間です。駐車場の前の道を奥から手前へと走り抜けていきます。
Es ist unser Protagonist. Immediately following Sua's explanation, a silhouette appeared on the footage. They seemed to be in a great hurry and ran from the back on the street to the front. As the resolution was quite poor, not even the gender could be ascertained at a glance, but Bun had already gotten the true crime laboratory to analyze that very point. Wie, er hat eine fucking Schuluniform und da Mädels alle Röcke tragen und er da eine Hose trägt, kann man ja daran schon allein irgendwo sein Gender vermuten, oder nicht?
科捜 圏で解析した結果、写っている人物は男。年齢は10代後半から20代とのことっす。です。人相の判別までは無理でした。服装がかなり特徴的ですが、これは小島にある私立水明学園の男子制服と分かりました。それと、右手に注目してもらいたいんですが、
The image enlarged on the right hand of the suspicious individual, it appeared to be grasping
ス
something.
ローで再生するとわかるが、走りながら腕を振っている際、この握りしめている何かが駐車場の照明に反射して光を放ってるんだな、これが。
Now at the good part, Bun took over Sua's explanation.
形状からして犯行に使われた十字架型の杭である可能性がある。
The detectives continued to murmur noisily. The crucifixion culprit may be a high schooler. The proportion was fairly shocking to them. After all, it meant that the new generation madness Monica that the mass media had been pushing could actually become a reality.
最も犯人に近い人物がこの少年だということか。
そういうことになりますね。
Bun stroked the stubble on his jaw. It was a habit of his. Whenever he felt one step closer to cornering a culprit, he would always reach for that satisfying scraping sensation.
以上です。
Sua took a deepest breath and sat down.
ひどいっすよ、先輩。美味しいところ持ってって。
Ignoring Sua's grumbling, Bun once again burned the image of the high school boy into his mind.
ようやく尻尾を出したんだ。そいつを掴んで離さねえようにしないとな。
Sure enough, the image Shogun had sent was in my cage folder. 168491 JPEG was its name. Obviously, a part of me was still hesitant to even look at it. I mean, it was a pretty fucking nasty image, grotesque as hell, too. I was sure just looking at it would throw me right back to the scene of the crucifixion, where the violent scene had taken place right in front of me. But even then, I need to expose Yua's flawed logic, and therefore guarantee my own safety and innocence. Thankfully, since Seratan was there for me, I could handle a little bit of gore. Mustering all of the courage I had, I double-clicked the file. Ich sehe gerade auch, da ganz unten, wo der Text ist, da ist er selbst auch drauf auf dem Bild. God, this was so gory, but compared to the crucifixion scene I had seen in person, it wasn't quite as bad. Telling myself that the image had to be fake, I was just barely able to stomach it. When I had first received the image, I closed it immediately after looking at it once. I hadn't inspected it thoroughly. This time, holding back the urge to vomit, I decided to examine the image in excruciating detail. Didn't know much about how the hell whether a picture was fake or not, but taking a look at the shadows, seeing if there was anything off about the surrounding area and other stuff like that should probably be enough. The only possibility I had in mind was that the photo had been taken in advance, and the crucifixion corpse had then been put on the top of it using CGI. And then, the day after Shogun had sent the picture to me, they would execute the crime exactly as they had it in the image. Thanks to the poor resolution and how dark the image was, I could only really see the stakes, leaving the true identity of the victim unclear. Light was only hitting the area surrounding the corpse, yet something about the image was just begging for me to look at the crucifixion itself. I felt like that was the intent of the person who had made it. I mean, come on, focusing that much light around the corpse was kinda overkill, don't you think? Well, it wasn't like it had been paying. I had been paying close attention to the actual crime scene, so I couldn't really jump to conclusions. In the picture, the demon girl wasn't standing in front of the crucified corpse. But when I opened my eyes wide and looked even closer, I noticed a silhouette in a dark spot on the left side of the image. I had almost completely missed it. To the low res of the image, the shadowed figure stood in, blended perfectly into the surrounding scenery. You could easily miss it if you weren't paying close attention. Obviously, the image was fake, but if the person who had taken the photo had accidentally left themselves in it, if they had, it was possible that they had forgotten to edit themselves out when they tampered with the image. Looked like they were wearing a Suime uniform. In that case, it had to be the demon girl. She had been wearing one at the time of the crime, after all. But when I took a closer look, I noticed the figure's hair was actually pretty short. Demon girl had long hair, like you are. Alright then. Time for some computer magic. I needed the details here. I opened up some image processing software and dragged the image in. Then with a big gulp selected the levels options in the adjustments menu and brightened the once dark corners of the image. What the hell? Pictured on the screen was unmistakably. How was it me? It didn't make any sense. I had never been there before the September 29th. It was fake. It had to be fake. Couldn't find any bit of proof that it was, but it absolutely had to be. Nothing made sense otherwise. I mean, Shogun had sent the image on the 28th, and the crucifixion murder case occurred on the 29th. If the image was what had happened on the 29th, then that would mean it was a picture taken from the future.
あなたには予知能力がありますか？
I kicked the plastic bottle at my feet and closed the paint program. I checked the file's properties to see when it was made, and then I lost all words. The timestamp was the 28th, but that was the least of my worries now. In the comments section of the properties menu was a single inconspicuous sentence, a sentence my eyes couldn't look away from. I slammed my hands on the keyboard before shoving it to the edge of my desk. I clutched my head. I could barely hold back my tears. What the hell had I done to deserve a whole week of nothing but more and more insane bullshit? Why was I the only one that had to deal with this shit? Hang on a second. If they had somehow managed to get a photo of me and then they had added it into the image of the crime scene, that would either mean Shogun had taken a photo of me without my consent, or he had somehow obtained my photo from another source. And considering how he had suddenly entered the chat room and started talking to me right after Grimm had left, he had likely been aiming for me and me alone from the very start. Shogun might very well have discovered my real identity. If that was true, then Shogun, the demon girl, anyone could raid my base at any moment, and then I would be abducted. I felt a chill on the nape of my neck. It was the gaze again. There was something there, watching me. Don't look at me. Did you really think I would turn around? I knew the rules of the game better than anyone, that it will take more than that to make me turn around game. Fear sent goosebumps all over my body, and I felt a strong urge to check that the door was locked. But instead of doing that, I just continued to stare at my monitor, as I was way too stubborn to let myself loose. Unable to calm down, I opened up my default word processor and wrote down everything on my mind. Demon Girl equals cold-blooded murder, has precognitive powers. Shogun equals Demon Girl's underling. Yua equals Shogun's underling. As I stared fearfully at the word demon, I began to wonder if the girl at the crime scene was actually a real demon. I mean, come on, she couldn't be human by any means. If she was a demon, she might actually be able to see the future, and if she could see the future, projecting a scene from the future onto a picture via psychic photography would be a child's play. It would line up perfectly with how she had somehow managed to carry out the gruesome crucifixion all on her own. She had then gotten her underling Shogun to send the image to me. A person who she knew would end up accidentally witnessing the crime scene. Ich frage mich gerade, warum er meint, dass es unbedingt jemand anders sein muss. Könnte ja das Demon Girl selber sein, wenn schon überhaupt bei dieser Vermutung, oder? I didn't know why she had done that. Maybe it was a threat. This will be you next if you tell anyone what you saw. Or maybe it was a death sentence. You are next. And if that really was what it meant, then
勝てるわけがない。僕は奴らにいつ殺されてもおかしくないんだ。
Kusunoki Yua faced the PC in her room. Her profile gravely serious, she swiftly read through the information displayed on the monitor. Before long, Yua let out a small sigh and released her hand from the mouse, glancing at a piece of paper sitting within reach of her. It was the very same paper she had put before Nichijou Takumi the day before, the printout of the chatlock between Neidhart and Shogun. Yua muttered a single name. The view of Takumi sitting alone on that Shoto Park bench appeared in her mind before she quickly shook her head to drown it out. Suddenly she looked behind herself in surprise.
今誰かに見られていたような。
Her gaze stopped upon a large stuffed Gero Froggy enshrined on her bed. Wondering if it had just been her imagination, she tilted her head in puzzlement. Then she slowly rose to her feet, walked over to her bed, and fell onto it head first. The sheets smelled of the sun. It seems that her mother had kindly dried the futon earlier today. Yua buried her face in that relieving scent, her gaze wandering about vacantly. Her room was very neat and orderly, placing meticulous personally on her display. This especially applied to her large bookshelf, which was rather incongruous for a room sized at around 13 square meters. It was packed tightly with countless books, leaving hardly any gaps. However, charmingly, the lower half consisted of nothing but complex academic books, computing-related books, and other similar material, contrasting greatly with the upper half, which was filled with shoujo manga and anime DVDs. With another sigh, Yua turned her body face up and stared at the ceiling. DID. Dissociative identity disorder, a condition in which a single person has more than one personality. A personality is defined as a continuous pattern of engaging with one's environment while being aware of the environment and their ego. In other words, a human being's ego represents itself by recognizing the continuous passage of time, confirming that their actions and subsequently received information are consistent, and from there is themselves. Personality change in DID is sudden and can be triggered by psychological stress, social stress, as well as various other environmental factors. The disorder is characterized by many cases in which different personalities do not retain the same memories. Okay, ist auch Multiple Personality Disorder früher gewesen. Und DID, also Dissociative Identity Disorder, ist die moderne Fassung. Wow, hier haben wir das Ganze nochmal. She muttered the name of the mental illness she had just been researching. An explanation related to it was displayed on her monitor.
辛いんですね